Good morning, America. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy. We've got a lot of material to cover today, and it's a Friday, so we'll try to make it fun and interesting. There's some interesting stories out there. The biggest story out there that was just announced were new updates to the ERC, or Employee Retention Credit. So this has been in the news a lot. It's big thing for businesses that have applied for it, but also the IRS is auditing and prosecuting people for submitting fraudulent information. So again, this is a big thing affecting a lot of people out there. And if you submitted to this, I would absolutely stay tuned to this because there's new updates, there's new information, and we're going to go through that bit by bit and cover that all for you so that you're fully informed and not surprised. So again, stay tuned with us. Hubert Johnson here at Guardian Tax Law. Hubert Johnson here. Thank you for watching again. Got a lot to cover today, like I mentioned earlier, so I'm just going to dive right into it. First article we're going to touch on. Just some more news about Boeing. I mean, if they could get their stuff together, it'd be great. So this is another Boeing 738 flight, and this one is from the Daily Caller. It took off from, I believe it was going from India, Hyderabad in India to Kuala Lumpur in Nepal. And 20 minutes after takeoff, one of the engines started emitting sparks. So only 20 minutes into the flight, it had to turn around and land. Again, another black eye to Boeing. What's going on here, people? It's just nuts. Only 20 minutes after takeoff, had to turn around and land. And so this just goes right into, feeds into the narrative that Boeing has some serious issues that they need to address here. It's sad seeing a major American company like this struggle worldwide with quality issues, especially something as scary as flying jets. But I just want to touch on that quickly. Didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. This next one is from Woke Spy, which I'm not exactly sure of the source. I see things come up, but I think it's more right-leaning. But this has been something that I've seen a few times in the news, and I haven't really talked about it. Nancy Pelosi is not the only one in Congress to do this, but she's one of the most bold ones. And this is a huge source of fraud that is illegal because Congress will not prevent the corruption and fraud that they undertake. Too many of them are very guilty of this, and so that's why neither party will do anything about it. But this is talking about lawmakers trading on stocks, of course, many of which they're overseeing, and being in Congress, they're privy to all kinds of information, so they can, that's privilege, that's not out there to the public, so they can make trades and make millions of dollars on inside information. If anybody else outside of Congress did this, they would be prosecuted and go to jail. On the NVIDIA stock trade, they've already made, their stock has already gone up so much, they've made $5 million from one investment in NVIDIA. And Nancy Pelosi and her husband, Paul, they're famous for doing this. They do this regularly. And to be fair, there are plenty of Republicans doing the exact same thing. So again, their investments and the percentage of gain on their investments are blown away. Even people like Warren Buffett. It's not by accident. It's just another way that corrupt congressmen and politicians take advantage of the system. And really, this is another way they're ripping off the American people by using insider information. Again, this is against the law for anybody but people that are in Congress. So this is a huge change I would love to see passed in Congress. There have been people that have tried to fight this, and the people that have been trying to pass these measures, they're in a very small minority, but there's support for this on both sides of the aisle. There are a few honest politicians trying to get this passed, but again, they can't get support from either the Republican establishment or the Democrat establishment, because it's an easy way for politicians to enrich themselves, make 10 times their salary with one trade, and it's done so regularly. This is how they're really killing it as far as congressional trades. This is a type of corruption that should be outlawed. Now I'm going to share another type of corruption. This one is a little scarier. But before I dive into this, I want to share an AP article before we really tackle some meat here. So California voters, this just happened the other day. They had passed, California is kind of interesting. So back in the 1900s, early 1900s, they had a progressive movement that passed a whole bunch of things unique to California, which gave direct power to the voters. Now, the progressive movement back then is nothing like what they say the people that label themselves progressives today. Progressives back then were focused on direct democracy and trying to fight the corruption in government. So that was their real focus. So they passed, where in California you have the initiative, you have the proposition, they can amend the California Constitution through, I forget which one it is, I think it's the initiative process. They can recall the governor, which most states do not have these mechanisms where the people can just get sick of the governor and recall him. Famously, Gray Davis was recalled probably 15 years ago. I'm losing track. It was a big thing, and that's when Arnold Schwarzenegger was first elected as governor of California. And then after with Gavin Newsom, he's had to face some recalls. So in this particular measure, this is done by people sick of increasing taxes in California. The problem is the legislature is so far left that the Republicans and people and businesses don't have a say in government. So they use the initiative and proposition path to get measures before the people so the people can vote on them. So they got more than 1 million people to sign a petition to limit any tax increases, to make it much harder for the California legislature to pass tax increases. And it was going to really affect the legislature's ability to function. Well, to function or to continue to raise taxes to pay for their constantly increasing budgets and spending. The problem is the Supreme Court of California got in the way, and they made a distinction, and here's the paragraph about it, between amending the Constitution and they call it revising it by altering the way government works. So they said, we'll let you use this process, but only so far. Again, there's a lot of criticism that this is a partisan leftist court. We've had mostly Democrat governors in California. I'm not in California anymore, but it's been they're saying that this is not following the law. They're making a distinction without a difference here, and just because they don't like the proposition that was got the signatures, qualified for the ballot, and yet they're removing that. So again, it's typical politics in California, but again, because they have this direct democracy thing, people they feel it's an end run around the legislature instead of actually making sure and supporting um, politicians that will vote for tax decreases instead of tax hikes. So again, California politics is a little nutty, uh, but again, this is the people trying to reduce taxes and getting shut down by the Supreme Court. And they were sued by the legislature and the governor who wanted to continue raise taxing and not have those restrictions. Pretty hefty restrictions at that. Next article, gets a little more serious. I'm trying to go through these quickly because we have so much information, but this is an elite billionaire family in the UK standing trial for human trafficking charges. So this is something that happens in the US too. And it's kind of scary. If you think slavery is dead, legalized slavery is dead. But with the border being wide open, this is why I'm sharing this, because it definitely affects the US and it's a big problem. So the case here, you have this family from India, and they've imported people to their, they're worth billions of dollars. Now senior members of the family are being charged with exploitation and human trafficking. So, and again, I don't understand how much a Swiss franc is worth, but they're paying them, making them work up to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. They confiscate their passports, so people just can't leave. And then they pay them in Indian currency, which they can't just go out and use anyway. They have to go and exchange that, figure out how to do that. But how do you do that when you're working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week? And so they're arguing that it's essentially slavery because they have no options. They're holding them in place, not letting them leave. And it's the sad thing is that this kind of exploitation and human trafficking, which I think it is. Again, how many labor laws are they violating by doing this? And they target poor immigrants that don't know better. We have the Middle East is known for doing this exact same thing, bringing in people from the Philippines, other really poor countries as workers, and then confiscating their passports, or only letting them leave for short periods of time ever, and they end up just working in horrible conditions, while anybody from Saudi Arabia lives a life of luxury, or from Qatar or the other places in the Middle East. We do get plenty of that, and again, we get people importing and using immigrants, Latino immigrants here in the United States, and doing the same thing to them, working them. But much worse than that is slavery still exists throughout the world, especially through Africa, the Middle East, where people are literally held against their will. Just a few years ago, Red Lobster, which is having plenty of problems, had a huge PR nightmare on their hands because it was discovered that a lot of their shrimp that they were getting was from shrimp boats where they literally had people chained up in the bottom of the boats processing shrimp, the shrimp hulls, and they were chained up and slaves on these shrimp boats. And that's one of the areas that they were sourcing their shrimp from. So again, it's still an ongoing problem here. This just came out. So on the same topic, and I'm into a break, so we're gonna have to come back shortly. Welcome back, everybody. So this is a little more contentious. Um, again, former President Trump dropping some bombs here, and this is a little bit old from May 13th, but it came up with that same article regarding the trafficking. Um, and Trump, again, this is from the Daily Fetch, calling for child sex traffickers to get the death penalty. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. If you understand the horrors and the absolute brutality that's inflicted on children, that scars them for life, the people that engage in this kind of behavior, they're not easily redeemed. And it's like they're murdering or destroying the lives of hundreds of people by doing this. It's just so he suggested that drug kingpins and child sex traffickers should face the death penalty. So he's talking about not your average guy settling a little bit on the street, but people really running the show, poisoning and killing. On average, 500 people was one of the comments. So of course, Huffington Post thinks that's absolutely ridiculous, violation of rights. That's weird. And one of the reasons for it, again, it's on average, they'll save 500 lives every time you get a drug dealer off the streets and keep them off the streets. The problem is today's laws, they go to prison and very quickly they're back on the streets. I'm not sure where he's getting those stats for. Or I guess he's quoting Gene Hamilton. If you get violent criminals and convicted pedophiles that go through and abuse children, that is one of the biggest problems that we have with our border, is that you get plenty of children being used and abused as they go through the process here. So there's a lot of people that argue they don't believe in the death penalty altogether. The question is, how serious are we going to be about protecting children and stopping human trafficking or slavery? I mean, we just had Juneteenth 2 days ago about celebrating freedom, and there's plenty of people that are suffering their loss of freedoms and actual slavery in the United States, in the world today. So again, I think from a humanitarian standpoint, maybe not the death penalty, but something extreme should be happen when you have people abusing children, and it's back in the news again because it just happened again in New York City, where a 13-year-old was tied up and raped by someone else here illegally. So we see it too often in the news, and it's not just illegal immigrants, but anytime you have people engaging in sex trafficking of children, I think it's something, we don't do a good enough job protecting the most vulnerable in a society, and that's a glaring example of it. So getting back to economics and taxes, got a couple interesting articles talking about inflation. And here's a valid point that how long can retail sales hold up? So overall, sales, the monthly number for sales is out. It's a little bit disappointing. They're up by 0.1% from the previous month. Now that's based on total dollar numbers. While you have, it's slightly better than previous month's decrease. But if you look at it long term and say, hey, prices are climbing, how many more sales are there rather than total sales? If you factor in inflation here, things are very different. And he compares tacos from Taco Bell from 1999. Of course, they've gone up dramatically, but you can get tacos for 69 cents or a fully loaded burrito for $1. That same thing today is probably going to cost you $6 to $7. Now, over 20 years, you're going to have inflation, but a 700% increase. And it's a huge problem, especially with fast food. According to official data, fast food has gone up by 20% and 26% in 4 years. But when you look at the real data, what people are experiencing, they're also saying that food at home has gone up by 25%. When you actually go out there and see what's out there, fast food has roughly doubled in price, and it's not done. So it's just, they have an interesting chart here to show. This is total advanced retail sales, retail trade, and food service. And so it dipped for the pandemic and then came back up, and then it's kind of been steady going up a little bit. But his point is that these numbers are based on paying double. So if you look at just the dollar amount, if you factor in inflation, here's the original chart going up and up and up. But if you put in inflation, dips for COVID, and total number of sales has gone down. The value of sales has actually decreased due to the really high inflation. So again, it's an interesting article, really focuses on what is real inflation, not the government numbers that are wildly distorted. So going with this, and this is from the Washington Examiner. Again, it's election season, so we have things being put out by Trump, by Biden. Some of them make sense, some are from both sides. It's like they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes and just tell us the sky is green, up is down, down is right, whatever. It doesn't make any sense when you look at the actual numbers. So technically, by claiming Biden is a deficit slasher, he can claim that because the deficit is down from 2020, from the COVID high where they spent a record $3.1 trillion. So in 2020, the government got shut down, the GDP dropped like a rock, spending went up. So you got this huge gap of 2020 of 3.1 trillion. Today, when this just happened where the CBO revised the expected deficit up to 1.9 trillion. So he's saying he's slashed deficit spending, but the main thing that's happened is that the government revenues have gone up, but we're still spending 2 trillion more than revenues. So 2020-21, the government spent like drunken sailors over COVID, mainly to try to get people back to work, restart the economy, etc. And to now claim that he's slashed deficit spending when spending right now is higher than ever, that's technically true. But when you look at the larger thing, before 2020, the largest deficit was $980 billion. And we are now spending twice that. Our deficit now twice that. So instead of addressing this and trying to correct this, we're still spending more than ever before. So last year was 1.7 trillion. Now it's going up to 1.9 trillion. Spending is continuing to increase, and that's an ongoing issue that's going to affect many, many people. So one last article before we dive into the topic of the day. And this is an interesting article because the Supreme Court upheld the Trump-era tax provision. So this is an interesting little provision snuck into the Jobs Cuts Act and really affects people investing in foreign companies. Now, the nasty part of it, if you go to the end of the article, it actually gives you the facts of the case. So, where was it? I read the facts here. Here it is. In 2018, the Moores invested in this foreign company, and had reinvested their earnings dating back to 2006. So whatever earnings they could have gotten were just reinvested back into the company, were not realized. So they, with a friend, they invested in this company in India. And now under the Trump tax cuts, they're saying, look, you need to pay taxes on that, even though you haven't taken any money out of the business. So it's not realized gains yet. So this went through the different courts, some agreeing, mostly agreeing, some disagreeing with the government. And the real question here is, can Congress, and because we have a limited government here in the United States, and there's limits on their ability to tax, and historically, by the 16th Amendment, which allowed for an income tax, it's only on realized income. So when you actually sell something, when you actually get a gain from most things. And so if the federal government, the Supreme Court, and this is liberals and conservatives on this decision, allowing them to go after the value of their investment portfolios, even though they don't, even if that only exists on paper. So if you have stocks going up one year and they might go right back down the next year, you can get taxed at that high point, and that's where you actually have to pull out some income to pay for the taxes. But if the value of the stocks goes down, they don't give you a refund. I mean, there's all kinds of problems, concerns with this, because it's a small, narrow issue of taxing foreign income if someone owns over 10% of it. The court allowed this, but the criticism is that it could open the door for a wealth tax. And so this is where they come in and they just tax people based on your total wealth. Doesn't matter if it's invested in companies. I mean, that would really affect investment, and would be a huge increase. And that's something that Democrats have been talking about, but it is constitutionally suspect. But this Supreme Court ruling today that just came out yesterday really opens the door for it, but they try to make the ruling very narrow to apply only to this case, but the same arguments and reasoning they use could be expanded to a larger wealth tax. So could be very interesting to see how that works and how that gets applied. So getting to the topic of the day, the ERC. So this is article from the New York Times, but also the IRS released a big press release yesterday about this. If you're not familiar with what the ERC, Employee Retention Credit, these are employers getting credit for having employees through COVID. So the government said, we will give you money to keep employees employed through these months. And there was, in 2023, and even into 2024, a lot of marketing, a lot of people pushing this because this is a very lucrative credit. People are going from now looking backwards and making sure that they get these credits and get their applications in. So the IRS got overwhelmed, and they're claiming a lot of these were done fraudulently or done incorrectly. So last September, they put a moratorium or a freeze on processing new applications. First of all, they weren't ready to process them. The government, again, got overwhelmed by one of these pandemic programs, and we're seeing this time and time again with, be it EIDL loans from the SBA or the IRS now, that their hold and wait times, their customer service times are atrocious. And this guy right here, Danny Werfel, is the IRS commissioner in charge of all of it. So I'd love to give him a piece of my mind. Probably wouldn't listen, but they're increasing enforcement more than ever. And even though they claim that customer service is better, it's absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's gone down in many ways. So not my favorite person right now. He's overseeing the IRS at a time where customer service and actually respecting clients' rights has dropped dramatically. The IRS is harder than ever to deal with right now. So they just announced recently that they're going to start actually working these claims. So what they've been doing since September of last year is organizing, data crunching, and trying to separate, okay, which ones are the worst claims, which ones have a low probability of fraud. And so they're trying to use computer systems to look at and analyze all this information from all these claims that they got. And they got overwhelmed with claims. So they haven't been issuing checks since September, but they have started, and they even put out in March, they had some deadlines where you could apply for some safe havens. You could withdraw. They would even let you keep 20% of what you received. But most people used companies to submit these ERC claims, marketing companies that charge more than 20%. So again, would put people in a really funny position. Some people took advantage of it. A lot of people didn't. So the highlight here, 90% of claims are potentially fraudulent. Now that's a little misleading. They have, again, the actual number that are considered high risk frauds, probably 20 to 30%. And then you have another 20, 30% that are low risk. And maybe 10% that are, don't have any issues. So again, that number is a little misleading, but they're investigating all of them, but especially the ones that have the higher fraud case. So this allows them to collect $26,000 for each employee on his payroll. And you can still file these claims, but they just opened it up, and they're working on the oldest claims first. And the refund for 2020 already expired. I think it was May 7th. So, but you can still apply for this for 2021. It was expanded in 2021, made even bigger, and cost the federal government $55 billion over a decade. But they got nearly 4 million applications by September, and they said, stop. We're going to hold off on processing new applications. They haven't paid anything out since then. So again, they're working these. They still have a backlog of 1.4 million claims. Most of the claims, or a lot of the claims, are being denied. And they started investigating tax preparation companies that marketed this. So the ironic thing is that the IRS, in their wisdom, sarcasm, greatly limited CPAs from doing these claims and charging for them. So it created a cottage industry, and it happens all the time when IRS does stuff like this, or the government does stuff like this, of people selling these services. And they were the ones charging plenty of money. If they would have just let the CPAs do it, they would be directly responsible. A lot of these tax preparation companies have already closed their doors because nobody wants to apply for it when you have a moratorium on it for 9 months. They can't make any money on it. So of course, when it's boom or bust created by the government's actions. And so these companies created directly, specifically for this purpose, many of them are already gone. So trying to get that money back from companies that have already closed down is going to be very, very difficult. And again, this is part of all the money being thrown at the $3 trillion in deficit passed by President Trump and Congress to try to keep people afloat through COVID. The COVID shutdowns had a huge, huge effect, unprecedented effect on the economy and people. So they extended the moratorium even further. So they're still not processing new claims, even though you can still submit claims. But it's going to take a very long time to get through that. Again, they've got about 17,000 applications per week, so plenty of people are still submitting them. Now here, this is where it gets better in the numbers. 10 to 20% showed clear signs of being erroneous. 60 to 70% showed an unacceptable level of risk. And then about 10 to 20% showed no warning signs. So the problem with this is a lot of people, and the rules have not been consistent this whole time. So a lot of people thought they were following the rules, and this happens all the time with new IRS programs. People follow the law, but they don't have any guidance, they don't have any results to really measure off, okay, how are they actually processing, what are they actually considering here? And so a lot of times they're doing what they can, and a lot of these companies had money back guarantees. You only pay when based on the percentage of what you get at the time that we get the money. So a lot of these companies are still waiting for the payments so they get paid. And then right now, and I'm going to jump to the actual IRS article covering this. And this is, again, huge headline. And just going through this, and the New York Times article, this is where they got their news. This is where they took the IRS article and just kind of regurgitated it. So again, between 10 to 20% showed a low risk, and we're in another break. So I've actually gone too far to another break. So I'm going to have to take a quick break here. Okay, welcome back for this final segment. One of the things I want to highlight here is this summer, they've been had this moratorium on payments for quite some time. First payments for the oldest ERC claims will start going out later this summer. So that's good news. That they're going to start sending them out, but they're going to be at a dramatically slower pace than initially. So, and they're going to be scrutinizing every single ERC claim. Right now, you don't need to do anything additional. Just wait for them to respond on your claim. If there is a response, if they deny it or have further questions, you have to be in touch. You have to be very responsive to make sure that your claim still has a chance of getting through. And again, the IRS is trying to tamp down on more ERC claims. People have it's really chilled the market because they've had this moratorium for so long on processing new claims. And it goes into some of the steps that they've taken. So again, disallowed 14,000 claims, but they've been getting 14,000. They have processed 28,000 claims, but that's what they were getting weekly. So this backlog is really insane that they have. And so one of the things you need to be careful of is they are prosecuting. They are, they still have the special withdrawal program. So you can always just pull your claim, withdraw from the process, and then avoid prosecution, avoid penalties for fraudulent claims, etc. And even if you've gotten the ERC check and you're not sure it was done correctly, you can still withdraw from the process. And then they had the voluntary disclosure program where it let people keep 20% of it, but the deadline for that was in March. And 2,600 applications took advantage of that. Again, it's an ongoing process. But this is a scary part. They've been really investigating these cases, 450 criminal cases so far, claims totaling in around 70 billion. The federal charges so far in 36 investigations, and with 16 resulting in convictions and 7 sentencings. So you don't want to go there. If the IRS is investigating you, it's a very bad thing. And the fact that they only have a very few charges that's made, that's because they make sure cases are very, very airtight before a prosecutor will actually take it and run with it. There are thousands of ERC claims under audit, and they are auditing most claims before paying them out. If you fall in that 10 to 20% where there's no issues, there's going to be a lower level of scrutiny, but they're also going after the tax proponents and preparers, the cottage industry, that they actually caused to be put up through poor planning and legislating. You can still check the eligibility checklist here. 7 warning signs, your ERC claims may be incorrect. There's facts about the ERC. There's a lot of information out there. The big thing here is, the highest risk claims just be denied. Doesn't mean you're done. It means you need to continue it, maybe correct some things. And just, if you applied for this or you're thinking about applying for this, just make sure you're doing it right. Make sure that you're working with, and they're using CPAs to process all of this, because this is all CPA work, doing the tax returns and all that. But the CPAs are limited in what they can do. So you have to essentially either try to do it yourself, which I don't recommend, or go through one of these companies. You can always talk to your local CPA, and there are some CPAs doing ERC claims, but again, they're limited in what they can charge. And so there's not a huge financial investment or incentive for them to do this kind of work, especially when they're typically overwhelmed as it is. So ERC, it's going to hurt a lot of companies. It's going to hurt a lot of people, and the worst part about it, it's going to create a lot more work for me. And while that's great for my business, it's bad for American companies. It's bad for people that are trying to get a leg up and trying to get assistance. And some of these, the businesses, they qualified for the credit at the time, and then some of the businesses already closed, but were rewarding for something they did during the pandemic by keeping their businesses open and try to stay afloat rather than let people go. But it's these laws are still handing out the hundreds of thousands of dollars usually, regardless if they're still open, regardless if they're still producing. And so it's money today being put back into the economy, not necessarily to keep these businesses afloat or improve the current situation. So again, it's just another way that the government is still throwing money at the economy, at the problems. But the sad part for me is that a lot of businesses that are doing this legitimately or thinking they're doing this legitimately are going to get hit with a lot of penalties and interest. They're going to have a lot of tax debt. And, again, I've already represented people that had to deal with being denied and had to deal with, all of a sudden they have issues with, now it goes back to the company that they originally hired to get a refund, etc. And so it really is creating a huge mess for businesses just trying to take advantage of a law and a credit that the government put out there. So if you know anybody that has questions about this, feel free to reach out, give us a call. We're staying on top of this. We don't do the ERC credit ourselves, but we know people that do. But if you're interested in applying for it, but at the same time, be careful. Be very careful in making sure this is done right, because it can boomerang and really hurt you and your business and your family's finances. The last thing you want is to have this cause hundreds of thousands of liability, especially if you already got the money. The IRS is trying to claw back a lot of this money. And so it's going to end up in a lot of taxpayers, a lot of businesses having to deal with the IRS, having to pay a lot of money back. And again, that's not ideal. It's not someplace you want to go or be. So again, if you have any concerns, call us. We can go over your situation for you, see if voluntary withdrawal might be the best way to go, or if you could actually contest these. And a lot of these companies, they claim that they claim that they would contest any audits or provide documents to respond to any paperwork. It's harder than ever to communicate to these departments because they're so overwhelmed. So general theme today, get ahead of this. Make sure you know and you're fully informed as to what's going on with this, because the IRS is overwhelmed in so many aspects today. And the customer service is, if you can get through to people, there's plenty of times you get through to people that can help you and that can assist you. But too often it's very difficult, and there's a lot of people, new people there, that just don't know what they're doing, and they'll give you bad information. So we do free consultations, we give free advice all the time, and we do this to help people. There's plenty of people that call us. We'll give them 30, 45 minutes of our time, give them some free advice and help them along their way when they don't. It's not something we can actually help them with, but there are plenty of things. We can always refer someone to somebody and put them in good hands. So if you have further questions, you can always rewatch the show. The links are being posted every single show on our YouTube channel, so you can look at these articles, pull them up, and I try to share the sources as well, so you can look up the articles yourself and read up on this. Get informed. This is your business, your future. So we're coming up on another weekend, and just a couple more weeks till the 4th of July, and I'm still getting a lot of questions on estimated tax payments. We just passed the June 17th deadline for second quarter estimated tax payments. I'm just going to wrap up with this because I'm getting so many questions, and a lot of people are wondering, do I need to pay estimated tax payments? Do I need to start sending more money to the government? As long as you're having enough withholding from your paycheck, and this is going to hit people W-2, self-employed, it's going to hit a lot more people than people realize. If you're not having enough withholding to cover your income, and if you got a recent raise or your income's gone up, you need to have it checked again and looked at again. And as long as you pay 90% of your tax bill through withholdings or estimated tax payments through the year, you will be fine. You'll avoid any penalty. But if you have side income, if you have other income, and usually pay the gap of whatever income by April 15th of the next year, you're going to get hit with this penalty, 8% penalty for what you didn't pay throughout the year. And so again, it's going to cause a lot of problems, a lot of issues. So you should be talking to your tax preparer throughout the year, especially if you have more information. One big change that we're advocating is that if you have QuickBooks or if you have a bookkeeper, you should be looking at your profit and loss statement every quarter. Not just throwing them a bunch of receipts, but you should have them on top of it. And this is a new standard that's being set to make sure that you know what your true tax bill is going to be. So if you have a bookkeeper and they don't understand what I'm saying, give us a call. We'll talk to them. Not a problem. And it's 520-485-7371. Our email's info@guardiantaxlaw.com. That's info@guardiantaxlaw.com. And you could always go to guardiantaxlaw.com, which is our website. Click on the YouTube link to watch these videos, follow the links, and go to the original articles and make sure you're fully informed about this, because this is going to surprise a lot of people. And I talk to high-end clients frequently where the bookkeepers are not used to this; they're not ready for it. The people running the companies are not prepared to do these kinds of numbers regularly, and it just blows my mind how many people I still talk to that don't know about this, don't know about the increased penalties. And if inflation continues to go up or stays persistently high, it's going to be a bigger issue moving forward. And I really hope I'm wrong, but with the government printing money and we're still spending money like crazy, it's a natural consequence of overspending, of printing more money and putting out more and more government loans. Another $2 trillion this year, or $1.9 trillion to be exact. So this is absolutely the time to pay down debt, get ahead on your taxes, avoid as many penalties and interest as you can, and that's through paying your taxes timely throughout the year and getting good tax advice. Again, that's our whole goal here, is to make taxes easy. So it's not, I don't put that in there facetiously. And that's our whole goal, is to help people understand their tax responsibilities and duties so that they can breathe easy. Once you're on top of it, you're taking care of it, it becomes easy. And that's why we refer people to bookkeepers, CPAs, tax preparers, excellent people across the country that will help people manage their information, help people prepare and pay less in taxes, because that's our goal too. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to us. I hope you have a wonderful weekend as we get ready, another couple of weeks of the 4th of July coming up. And if you have any questions, the third quarter estimated tax payment deadline is September 16th. Prepare for it now. If it's hard to sit there and do one quarter or 3 months at one blow, which next quarter is a 3-month period, do it monthly. Get ahead of it, and that'll make it so much easier when you hit that quarterly payment. If most of the payments are already paid in, you can figure it into your monthly budget, and it's a lot easier to handle. So again, Hubert Johnson here with Guardian Tax Law. I hope you all have a great weekend, and forget about taxes for the weekend. But again, if you have stresses, if you have worries, give us a call, get that peace of mind, and get the answers you need. I just had someone yesterday ask about tax planning and tax avoidance strategies, and tax avoidance is using the IRS rules legally. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. And within 20 minutes, had them referred out, and they were connected, and they were very grateful for that connection. So again, if you need a connection across the states, we can provide it 99% of the time. So again, have a great weekend and have some fun with your family, and we will see you on Monday.